This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
And good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending upon what you're watching this particular program. And welcome to Main Street. Gary Allen with you, as we are every week. I hope everything has been great for you since the last time we spoke and saw each other. Before we get into today's program, which is a very interesting program, we're going to be talking about autism. But before we get into that, I just want to say thanks to the Japanese Gardens of Miami, as well as the Elks Lodge, South Florida, for their continued support of this particular program. Without them, we cannot make this thing actually work. We have an interesting program for you today. You've heard the word autism, like Alzheimer's or cancer. And unless it hits your family or a friend's family or a neighbor or a cousin or somewhere in your life spectrum, you're not sure what it is. You think you know what it is because you've seen programs on TV like 60 Minutes or 2020 where they talk about children who are autistic. And the autistic spectrum, which we will talk about, goes from very mild cases to very severe cases. Well, today we have some folks in from CARD, also connected with the University of Miami, as well as Nova Southeastern University, to talk about this issue. CARD is the Center of Autism and Related Disabilities, again, connected with the University of Miami and Nova Eastern South. No, I knew I was going to get that all screwed up. Nova Southeastern University. And without further ado, let me introduce them to you. We have first Dr. Michael Asandre, PhD, Executive Director of CARD, Ms. Jennifer Feinstein, MSW, CARD Specialist, Mr. Ramon Matos, he's a client of CARD, the CARD program, as well as the Elks Lodge, current Exalted Ruler of 1776, and Mr. Rick Del Vecchio, Executive Producer of this program, as a former Exalted Ruler of Lodge 1676. I always want to say 1767. Anyway, it's just a bad habit. Welcome to all of you very, very much. Before this was a question I was going to ask Ramon, since he is a client of yours. What is ASD? And whoever wants to take that, go ahead.
What isn't it? Yes, I think it's a great question. So ASD stands for Autism Spectrum Disorder. That is the most important thing. And it is essentially a developmental disorder, meaning it affects aspects of human development that cause an individual to have difficulty in very specific areas of functioning. You know, mostly socialization, being able to interact with peers or other individuals. Communication, some individuals have a difficult time producing speech. Others have lots of speech, but have a difficult time having conversations or navigating social communicative exchanges. And then the other area that's very definitive of autism is something called ritualistic and repetitive behaviors, where individuals are engaging in behaviors that look repetitive or what we call stereotypic. And in often cases, they're doing that as a form of self-regulation. But they are behaviors that look different than you'd expect to see in just a general, neurotypical individual. We think autism is it's certainly a neurological developmental disorder, and we're pretty certain that there are genetic factors that are underlying autism in combination probably with some environmental factors, but we're not entirely sure always what the actual cause is for why people have autism.
When someone hears that their child, or they know that they're watching their child grow, and I know this starts at an infancy and it works its way all the way through life, and they don't necessarily maybe know where to go. And Tommy, please put up the website and the phone number throughout the program so we can let people know where they can contact the people at CARD. They're celebrating 30 years, by the way, in the Miami area, and I think that's really great. They have an event coming up on April 27th. We'll talk about that as we move through the program. But when people come to you, Doctor and Jennifer, and they're not sure, because, it's like with Alzheimer's. Yes, I show signs of Alzheimer's. I forget where my keys are. I forget that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I have Alzheimer's. But when the parents come to you and they say, what's wrong with my child? And then you say, well, they have autism. Is it a relief? Oh my God, we have something to work with here. And is it also a relief when you tell them, we have a place for you to go? We have the tools to give you to get through life, to manage as you grow each and every step of the way. Is it a relief that the people know that you exist out there and the benefit you've been doing for 30 years in the Miami community?
Well, do you want me to start, Jen?
Sure. Yeah. Why don't
I'll
you
start
start
and
with
I'll pivot to
children?
you. So I think Ramon's trying to get into.
Yeah. It looks like
Yeah.
Ramon is backstage.
What I'll say to you is that people come to us after they received a diagnosis generally. So they're already coming to us informed that either they themselves or their child has a diagnosis of autism, and they're really looking to pivot to the next steps in terms of finding a school, finding a therapy team, determining kind of the plan of action going forward in terms of a treatment plan. So
Mhm.
generally, I think they're anxious. I think they're concerned. There is a sense of relief that there's a place that they can go to get a lot of the information that they need. And then I'll pivot to Jen because Jen is part of our team that oversees adults and teens with autism.
Yes.
Oftentimes, those individuals are diagnosed. Those individuals are diagnosed late in life, and there are different experiences. But generally speaking, I think most people, when they are diagnosed late in life, do feel a sense of relief to understand kind of the challenges that they've had as they've gone along their life journey. Jen, do you want to add?
Yeah, sure. I do because, as Dr. Alessandri was talking about the different symptoms, and it's called a spectrum for a reason because everybody is different within the autism spectrum. There's a very wide range. And so even though the symptoms and the issues, the challenges that people have are throughout the lifespan, so they generally emerge in early childhood, many people are not diagnosed until later. And so we definitely see families with teenagers who are just diagnosed. We see adults who are just recently diagnosed. And of course, also the human emotion when you find this diagnosis, also just runs a huge spectrum from, like
Right.
Dr. Alessandri said, just that feeling of relief to
Right.
feeling angry, to feeling unsure. I mean, one of the things we do at CARD is help people understand the diagnosis too, and really understand what it means. And there are some people who come in and they're like questioning. They're like, well, the doctor said this, but I don't know. Do I see it? And so we really help people kind of, come to terms with what it means for them,
Right.
and really figure out that it's it's a different brain. It's not a bad thing, it's just a different thing for
Are the
different
people
people.
that are diagnosed later in life, are they misdiagnosed or not diagnosed because it's mild symptoms, or it's because they're not showing symptoms early, like a teenager or an infant? Like 1 to 10 to me is an infant, and then the teenage years. Is it just primarily because nobody's really paid attention to that person to see that there is signs here already developing?
I mean, it's both. It's
I was going to say all of the above.
all of the above, right? Exactly. We
Okay.
have cases of individuals who are never diagnosed because their
Wow.
symptomatology was, relatively mild. Maybe they grew up in a time where our understanding of autism is different than it is now, and so the diagnostic criteria keep evolving over time. So they might have missed that wave.
Right.
Other folks are misdiagnosed. They're diagnosed with other things that coexist with autism, but somehow the autism was overlooked. So yeah,
Really?
like Jen said, tick, 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 all of the above are possible.
Ramon, let me ask you and introduce you, Ramon, and you are the sort of the grand poobah over there at 1676. The
Everybody
exalted
calls me that. Yeah.
Huh?
Everybody calls me that.
The grand
Yeah,
poobah.
the grand poobah.
Yeah.
Ramon,
Yeah.
when you were a young man and you were going through, before you knew that you were autistic, okay, before you and your family knew that you were autistic, what went through your mind, and what a relief was it to you when you found out, oh, this is what I have and this is how we deal with it?
Well, let me tell you that just like Dr. Alessandri was saying, I was misdiagnosed. I was born in Puerto Rico, and about 5 years old in 1974, I think it was 75. My parents was told that I was hyperactive. So I was hyperactive. And then you fast forward to about 1994, about 20 years later, it was changed to ADHD. So people weren't sure what's going on up here with me. And 1999, I had moved to New York, and so I'm going with a psychiatrist by the name of George Armenteros, who has ties with the card, and he said, you have Asperger's syndrome, and so, but I still didn't know what that was. I didn't know that was autism. In 2008, when I had moved back to Miami, and I'm kind of a Miami lifer like you, Gary. I've been here since '81. So
I love Miami. I love Miami.
definitely, yes, me too. It's home. It is home. But basically, so the first time I went to CARD was about 2008, and I was still, I got Asperger's syndrome. Huh? Well, that means you're autistic. So it's only 16 years ago that I hear that I was on the spectrum myself because I had Asperger's. So, I mean, it kind of released me a little bit, and I was able to, come to grips with why it was that I did certain things or behaviors or whatever. And it kind of loosened me up a little bit. It kind of changed the way I behaved. You know, it's kind of like it freed me a little bit. It's like I didn't have to pretend anymore that, hey, this is what I am. And I even went on to make history. The first exalted ruler on the spectrum, I believe, in the entire order of Elks. Somebody told me the other day, I was at an event, a seminar this weekend in Orlando, and somebody said, "No, I think there was somebody else." So maybe I'm the second one, but the first one forward, at least.
Yeah.
So,
We're talking to the folks from CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. We've been putting up here the phone number as well as the website, card.miami.edu. They can answer all your questions for you. There's so much information on there to tell you exactly where to go, phone numbers, people to talk to. You're not alone. I'm just going to say that right up front. You are not alone. There are people out there that you can reach out to at CARD that will be there for you. They will talk to you. They will help you and your family, give you the tools to help you get through life. And I'm so pleased to have everyone here today. Mr. Del Vecchio, my brother in life, you have been around Ramon. You have talked to these different wonderful people here. And I have been around autistic people in the show business community. You've been around autistic people in the community. And I'm so happy that there still a stigma on all this? I hope not.
I don't know. I mean, that I guess Ramon and Dr. Alessandri and Ms. Feinstein could tell you that. But I've known Ramon for many years through the Elks Lodge. And, one of the things, again, not knowing myself what autism is, I asked Ramon one day, and he was talking similar to what Dr. Alessandri said. In his case, sometimes he had trouble in the beginning, like looking at somebody straight in the face when they're talking to each other. I'm correct, Ramon? Is that what you told me?
Right. I probably still have that. Oh, I get too distracted that there's somebody in the eye,
But and another thing, some people might think that they lack intelligence. But let me tell you something about Ramon. You don't want to bet against him in sports trivia, music trivia, and probably history. But Ramon and I, on karaoke nights, we sang All the Girls I Love Tonight. I did Willie Nelson. He did Willie.
Oh, God.
But the interesting part, I just said, let's do it. And we do a pretty good job. We'll do that. Next show, we'll do it. But then Ramon, as soon as I said that, and I'm going to get the dates wrong, he'll correct me. He goes, yeah, this is number 2 on the pop charts in 1984. And he starts telling me how many records it sold. He knew all the details of it just off the top of his head. But
Ramon, do you remember, do any of you remember a gentleman named Tiny Tim?
Oh, yeah.
He suffered from autism.
Really?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Tiny, I met Tiny through my uncle who was a comedian on Miami Beach. He could tell you statistics about baseball players in the 1920s, the 1930s, the 40s. He loved baseball. He could tell you about football. And he never referred to me as anything but Mr. Allen. He wouldn't eat in front of us. He would drink maybe a soda or something, but that would be about it. But and yes, it was difficult for him to make eye contact with people. And I find that in the show business world, and I know you're going to say, well, Gary, that doesn't make any sense. You're on stage, you got to make contact. Not really. There's a spotlight on you. You don't have to make contact with anybody. I did with my ex-wife, but that's another story for another day. But let's talk about some of the early signs of what autism could be. And doctor, you can take it, or Jennifer, you can take it, whichever you want, or Ramon, in your case, we talked about that you were misdiagnosed several times. But what are some of the early signs of children? And let's preface this by saying, folks, not every one of these signs doesn't mean that your child has autism. So let's say that right up front. So I'll leave it to the professionals. What are some of the early signs that you should think, well, maybe I should take my child to see a specialist?
Well, I think it's a really good question. Let me just say a couple of things. One is that we are actually very good at diagnosing autism by age 2. The research is very supportive that we can reliably make a diagnosis at age 2. In some cases, where it's more obvious, we can do that by 18 months. But still, unfortunately, in this country, most kids on average are not diagnosed until they're maybe 4 years old. And if they're minority children, they're diagnosed even much later than that. So
Wow.
we miss out on a lot of early intervention opportunities when we diagnose kids later than what they can be diagnosed. So knowing the signs and understanding the signs and being able to visualize the signs as early as possible is absolutely critical to the outcomes of these individuals. So there are a number of different things. I mean, most people think about speech and the lack of speech as one of the hallmarks in the early stages of autism, but it turns out that that's, most kids maybe say single words by a year, maybe say 2-word phrases by 2 years. So people generally don't really get even concerned until they're beyond 2. So really what parents need to look for is what we call the nonverbal signs of autism. So whether or not a child can point at objects in order to direct your attention, whether or not they can follow your point if you're pointing at something, eye gaze, if they can make eye contact and share what we call sharing attention with a social partner, also responding to their name, being able to turn and understand that someone has called your name can be a red flag. And then, of course, there are those repetitive behaviors. You might see a child flapping his or her hands, or rocking back and forth, or maybe lining their toys up in an unusual way, or even possibly looking at their toys in a visual way that's very idiosyncratic. So what you really want to look for, I always tell parents, don't be concerned about speech, of course, but don't let that be the thing that you're focused on, hyper focused on, because there are earlier signs than a failure for speech to develop that would be more indicative of a problem with basic social communication. So, and there are some really wonderful websites now out there that parents can reference. One is called My Baby Navigator, and another one is called the Autism Navigator, and they help parents understand those early nonverbal cues or signs of autism, which are really, really helpful. And of course, you should be checking in with your pediatrician for your well baby visits. You should be getting screened at 18 and 24 months. All of those things I think really have to be part of the process.
Is that a problem? You just mentioned pediatricians. Is that a problem? Like when I did a program a few years ago on Alzheimer's, some of the doctors that I had on the show said, we're afraid to tell people that they have Alzheimer's, or we're afraid to tell the families because they don't know how to deal with it. Well, Ramon just told us he was misdiagnosed. Are there many physicians out there, pediatricians, who don't really understand the spectrum and they misdiagnose on a regular basis? Do you see that a lot, Jennifer?
Yes, and I think Dr. Alessandra can talk to this even more, but I definitely think I personally have a feel that definitely happens. And I feel like when you're talking about a general practice, just kind of like your general physician that we all see and pediatricians, they're seeing a huge number of people. And when you're dealing with numbers, and it almost boils down to averages, I think.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes that's why in a some pediatricians, they might be like, well, they'll start talking by the time they're 3. Boys talk later. You know what I mean? Like we see those kind of things. I think it's one of the difficulties when you see a large number of people. You're not specializing in particular. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think, we have to remember that pediatricians don't get as much training in developmental disorders as they do in medical illnesses, right? And so part of the challenge is knowing the signs, understanding how they manifest in boys and girls and at different ages. But also the other thing, just to, give pediatricians a little bit of a break here, it's the time that they have. It's very difficult when you're seeing patients back to back in a very short order to be able to really assess kind of the quality of the symptom presentation. When they come to a clinic like ours that we have here, we can sit with them for an hour, 2 hours, spend the time. But it's not that way in a pediatric practice. It's much more, it's just much more rapid turnover because just the level of need is so much higher. Which is why we rely on screening tools and different kinds of assessments that parents can complete, checklists that they can do in the pediatric practice office. But we've also seen sometimes that even when the kids are screening positive for being at risk for autism, sometimes the doctors aren't always sharing those results either. So there is still a reluctance, I think, depending on the level of comfort and also maybe the relationship with the family as your client. There can be a little trepidation about maybe getting it wrong. But we always say, I always say err on the side of overdiagnosing, because at least you can set someone on the right path to some treatment, even if they don't necessarily need the treatment that you're recommending.
Right. Ramon, on a day-to-day basis, and people know and they find out you're autistic, has it affected your relationships? Does it affect it at the beginning because people don't know what it is in some cases? Or has it allowed you the opportunity to educate people on autism and to allow them to have more knowledge about what's going on, which might affect and help a member of their family at some point?
I would say that it's both, but a lot of times I like to make it a point that I'm on the spectrum, that I have this condition, so that they know. Some people may say, "Yeah, you don't have to tell them that. You just keep it to yourself." And I just say, or they would say, "That's okay. Don't worry." No, but I just like to tell them, "Look, this is why I'm like this." And wanted to know about it so they know more about it. But as far as relationships are concerned, I think it has affected me perhaps. I mean, I have trouble finding jobs, and believe it or not, I'm unemployed right now. I mean, I don't have a 9 to 5 job, but I wonder if that has to do with it. I mean, I don't know. The other thing is, I've never been on a date in my life with a girl/woman. And I've thought that maybe it affects me there too, because, the way that I can approach, strangers, especially the opposite sex, and, being more aggressive with that, with communication and with, and having more audacity when it comes to knowing what to do, letting the tongue be loosened a little bit. So
Ramon, let me clear you in on a little bit. As a male in this world who doesn't have autism, knowing what to say to women can often be a very difficult bridge to get across.
Yeah.
Trust me, I was married once for 9 years. Now, Rick has been married a long time. Dr. Alessandra, I don't know if you're married. Jennifer, I don't know if you're married or not. But relationships like that can be very difficult. But I know what you're going through. I mean, I'm 71 years old and I haven't dated in a long time because I just don't have the time for it. But don't they have dances and parties and people can get together that have autism and they can mingle and be friendly with each other somewhere in Miami?
Well,
I mean, there are different organizations doing different kinds of events. Some of the challenges is that the spectrum is super broad. Another challenge might be that maybe Ramon doesn't need to date someone who's on the spectrum. That would limit his dating pool, right? Like maybe he should find anyone and have a person. And I think you can. I love that Ramon shared that, because you can see that, like you just said, dating is hard for everyone. And that's a high level social awareness that's required, right? Like, is this a come on? Is it inappropriate? What should I say? What should I not say? Reading people's nonverbals, which we heard Dr. Alessandri describe that those are some of the central struggles with autism. And so you can kind of see why that's even harder. But Rick, were you going to talk about the things you're doing?
Yeah, the Elks have a grant program, the Elks National Foundation, ENF, and I've been writing grants for about 3 years now. And I tried to get this impact grant 2 years ago. That's a competitive grant. They don't have that many that they give new. They gave 9 out this year, and luckily we got one. And what we're using it for is to work with the CARD program to put on quarterly events. We're going to do 4 quarterly events. The first one we did February 25th. It was a barbecue, and we had close to 100 people show up, plus we had about 25 volunteers from the Elks and about a dozen volunteers from the CARD organization. And I think it was a success. It was a barbecue, plus we had a hoop shoot and a soccer shoot for those who were athletic, and for those that wanted something a little bit tamer. They had a room where they had different board games, and then we even had a quiet room where people could relax and nice comfortable leather couches and sofas and whatnot, and just relax and chill. And I think it was successful. I think Jennifer was there. She could add more to that of how successful it was. And I thought it was a great program. And the good thing about it was about 17 of us took a sensitivity training class online about a week before. And it was enlightening. It really was, because like you say, most people, including me, knew very little about autism and the different spectrums, like Asperger's, for instance, which Ramon has. So it's interesting. And we did learn a lot in that sensitivity class. And we did see at the barbecue all sorts from the spectrum. There were some people there that had that repetitive movement and that Dr. Alessandri mentioned. And then most of them were, I would say, similar to Ramon. They were very active and could interact. And I think the interaction, not only amongst themselves, but with the volunteers from CARD, the volunteers from the Elks Lodge, I think that was a good thing. And Jennifer could probably touch on that more than me.
Yeah.
And what we're going to be doing, we're going to do another quarterly program next quarter, and of course, all the way to the end of the year. But on the third Saturday of each month, starting in April, we're going to have Talent of the Spectrum. Ramon plays the guitar and sings. He plays an open mic at the Elks Lodge every Thursday. But we're going to open up this Talent of the Spectrum and invite folks from the CARD program who may have a talent, whether it's reciting poetry, comedy, singing, playing an instrument, magic, whatever. They'll be able to come and demonstrate their talents. Their families and caregivers can come as well. And we hope that this will add to the socialization aspect of it, and also kind of educate people like myself, who want to attend and participate in that event as well.
I want to straighten something out before we go very far. The phone number is 1-800-9-autism, and extension number 1 is where you go, card.miami.edu. And there is also an autism assessment clinic at 305-284-6140. And you can also go on the website, again, card.miami.edu. They can give you all the information you could possibly need. I was reading somewhere that 1 out of every 36 children are diagnosed with autism. I mean, that is, wow, that's a lot of young people. Is there any reason? It sort of like goes back to this crazy thing, and I don't mean to simplify it, but I'm using it as an example. Is there any reason why we're seeing that number of children with autism, like children that suddenly are allergic to peanut butter out of nowhere? I mean, is there a reason why we're seeing so much of that now?
Well, the scientific community hasn't quite answered that question yet. So I think it's still a head scratcher for a lot of people. I think one thing that we know for sure is that there have been changes in the way we diagnose autism over time. So when I started my career, it was much more narrowly defined.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's much more broadly defined. So I think that's one of the factors that's contributing.
Right.
I think our methodology that we use to assess who has autism is better. So our numbers are probably more accurate than maybe they've ever been. And then, of course, there's the possibility that it's increasing, truly increasing. And maybe as a result of the combination of whatever the genetic factors are interacting with whatever the environmental factors are. And we just simply don't know on the environmental side what those triggers are. We do know that there are almost about 200 genes that we know are related to autism. We call them the autism risk genes. So there is a lot of genetic factoring going on here, but it's not genetics alone, because you can have identical twins where one has autism and the other doesn't, even though the likelihood of both having it is higher than you'd expect. In a general population, there are cases where only one does and one doesn't. So it's not 100% of a genetic disorder. I think that's the tricky part. So the truth is, people who sit in my chair, academics, we don't for sure know the answer.
I want to get back to what Rick was talking about, Jennifer, with you. You've been to see some of these events that the Elks put on. How beneficial are they, not only for the children, but for the parents?
Yes.
And I know it has to do a body good to see this. And Ramon, have you been to some of these events as well?
Yeah, of course I have. I have.
Well, you're the grand poopah, so yeah.
Of course.
Of course. So I kind of hosted that thing in a way, because Bessie, exalted ruler. I had, like somebody says, it takes a village. Somebody once said, but I like to say, I had my city behind me, so there's all kinds of people who were doing different things, and I have a great team there, and all I did was help out on whatever they needed and all that. And
did you enjoy it, Ramon? Did you have fun at the?
Of course, it was great. It's really good. It's like and it was an honor for me to introduce myself and to welcome everybody there, and to say a few words about myself and about CARD, and it was great to have all those people. I got to meet a lot of them, and it was great. And like somebody said, the board games, Rick, you said, I think I was part of that one. So
right.
See the soccer shoot, but I was there with the board games, and playing Scrabble, which I won. So always.
Yeah.
I should have let that girl win.
That was your mistake, Ramon. You got to let her win.
Yeah. Anyway, but no, it was great. It was fun.
Too.
That was such a great experience to have there. To have the two worlds come together, because this is not the first time, by the way, that the Elks have to deal with autism. In the Tampa Bay area, St. Petersburg Lodge is very involved with this. They've been putting on something called the Masking Autism Gala in St. Pete for years now. I have been to it the last 2 years, and I was told that I should go this year. That maybe I'll be sponsored for it, whatever. So, but that's another story for another day. But it's a great event. It's kind of like something that CARD puts on called Tropical Nights.
Right. That's coming up April 27th this year. We're going to talk about that. Yeah.
Well, this is also April 27th, believe it or not.
Really?
The Unmasking Autism Bowl in St. Pete. But they're very involved. They even got Walgreens to do something, where they raise money or things for autism. There are all kinds of things. The charity services of the Elks here in Florida, they deal with a lot of autistic kids, and it goes on and on. It's starting to, and this is why I became a member in the first place, because I wanted to spread the word about autism and get the Elks involved with autism.
Yeah.
So they're trying to put on one of these Unmasking Autism galas here in South Florida, maybe in a couple of years. So we'll see. But it's an honor to see the Elks involved so much with autism as well.
And I wanted to say that what I thought was really wonderful about the barbecue that we had in February was like you said, we made it for teens and adults so that we could kind of, like have a good population so we could know what kind of entertainment to do. And really invited people of all abilities. So anyone, anywhere on the spectrum, and people were welcome to bring families and caregivers with them if they needed. And you really did have it was a great turnout of people
Yeah.
of all levels, all abilities, enjoying being themselves. And everyone could just be themselves. I loved the entertainment, that everyone loved the magicians and the mentalist, and
As long as you don't, Jennifer, as long as you don't have Del Vecchio singing, you're okay.
right, he didn't sing,
You're
thank
okay.
goodness.
By the way, I don't know if you guys know this. I've known this man for 40 years. He's like my big brother, so I can pretty much say whatever I kind of want. The next time you're going to do one of these, let me know,
Sure.
because I still have entertainment buddies all over southeastern Florida. I mean, Joe Johnson from Magic 102.7 is one of my dearest friends in the whole world. Will Schreiner, and I know a lot of lookalikes.
Right.
I know a lot of people that are impersonators that would probably love to donate their time to be part of what you guys are doing for entertainment, walk around the tables, take pictures, have fun. I mean,
Sure.
people in show business, we are very giving people. I mean,
Right.
we really are. So, keep that in mind, Jennifer and Doctor, please keep it in mind. I'd be more than happy to. And Ramon, you don't know this, but I'm almost a member of that Elks Lodge.
Yeah. We'll get you there this year.
Almost.
I got in because I'm a veteran, because I served in Vietnam. So
Yeah.
I did it that way.
By
And,
the way, I found out today we're having an Elvis impersonator at the charity ball this Saturday.
Yeah. Right.
who's the impersonator?
His
I
name
have
is
no idea.
Larry Castro.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right.
Okay, all right.
It's very good.
Because I know more Elvis impersonators, having lived in Las Vegas for so many years than I got hair on my head. I mean, there's all kind of Elvis impersonators. But please, I avail myself to you. If you need anything, please let Rick know and let me know. I can make a bunch of phone calls and see what I can do. I'm always happy to help the community, which I love very much. So,
Well, we're gonna do it, right, Michael? We're gonna call him.
Let's do it.
And we'll make it on. I wanted to share one little story with you guys.
Sure.
We have an adult who's super eloquent. She has a really hard time leaving her house. And she and her parents came to the event, the barbecue, and she said that the fact that we had a quiet room, that you were able to find a space
Right.
to have a quiet room, and we kind of advertised, she said that is the reason why she came, because she knew there
Wow.
would be a quiet room. And so she wouldn't have been able to go to something without that.
Yeah.
So
One
Yeah.
question that just came to mind. You mentioned the quiet room. When a young person, a teenager, and Ramon, you can probably answer this, Jennifer, you can, Doctor, you can too. Well, all of you can. When a teenager finds out they have autism, how are they treated in school?
Well, in my case, I was always treated like a troublemaker. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. So he's getting in trouble again. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was in detention or in suspension. Every time I go to Orlando, for instance, nowadays, I remember how when I lived in New Jersey in the late 80s, I was left out of a school class trip down to Orlando, ironically, because of that, because I had made too much trouble that year. And, I've gotten suspended, gone in detention a couple of times. So the principal said, no, you're not going there. So that depressed me for a while on top of the autism. I became depressed. So depression on top of autism, my friends, is not a fun thing. So, but, it continued even on through my years. I did go to
All right.
93. And, but I almost didn't make it because there was a professor who had it against me. And there was something inappropriate, unfortunate, that I said one day after a class about another classmate. And the professor, she tried to get me expelled from the U. And fortunately, cooler heads prevailed. And I was able to graduate in 93. And here I am.
Ramon, you wouldn't be alone. My classmate Sylvester Stallone was expelled from the U. So don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. He was thrown out of the school because he didn't have any money anymore and he couldn't
Oh,
afford to go there and he was sleeping in everybody's closets. You know,
well,
I often kid him when I see him about that. It's something else. But that goes back to my point, guys.
Yeah.
The educators out there,
They don't
how
know. Yeah.
they don't know. Their ignorance is blind and they don't care to know. They know what they know and they don't move on. I mean, my God, poor Ramon.
I think
And how many how many
it's
people
really
like
hard.
him?
I know it is hard. There are stories like that. Um, it is really difficult for children. You can, and for teenagers especially. Um, there can be bullying. Most educators, I think, do know a lot more about it now. I think, as Dr. Alessandra was saying, like, and you can talk about that, Michael, obviously, but you know that our understanding of the spectrum has broadened and it has grown. But it's something that we deal with a lot at CARD. And I think that's one of the things we do well is helping the individual, the family know that you're not alone and trying to find the appropriate supports. Because when you have the appropriate supports, you don't end up just being seen as like a discipline problem all the time.
Right,
let me
right.
just say that I have to credit my mom also because
Yeah.
she really went to work for me. She went to fight. She fought for me so much, especially when I was a little kid and I was growing
Yeah.
up when I was a teenager. Boy, my mom spent so much time dealing with these people, and even to this day, she's always trying to help me out.
Yeah.
Trying to help me steer that path. To stay in the straight and narrow. So big ups to my mom. So
Well,
for
Ramon, you got a big brother in me now. You won me over, and Del Vecchio will tell you that's not easy to do. That's not easy to do. Doctor, what about the outreach programs, going to the high schools and going to the local colleges and having people speak on this? Because there has got to be in every high school, every college, every elementary school, there must be children with autism that are being picked on or left behind or
Yeah.
treated like Ramon
Well,
was treated.
right. Yeah. I mean, I want to say that, autism's, it's evolving, right? And so the exposure that educators have to autism is also evolving. So you may be trained in one way of understanding autism and now find yourself working in the field and now you're encountering different forms of
Mm,
autism. So I think we have to kind of give educators, a little bit of not a pass, but at least an understanding that their evolution of their own knowledge has to grow as our understanding of the spectrum grows.
right.
We do extensive school-based training of teachers and administrators and therapists, and we do a lot of training now for the neurotypical kids to be more sensitive to their peers with autism, so we can hopefully reduce those episodes of bullying. So it's a moving target, and unfortunately, because the prevalence is growing so rapidly, like just when you think you have everyone trained up, you've got to
Right.
kind of train a lot more people because there are just that
Yeah.
many more people with autism that are in the classrooms than were ever
Yeah.
there before. So it's a little bit of a heavy lift for us because we're always kind of behind the eight ball, and honestly, we really never do enough, and we never can achieve our ultimate goal, which is to have everyone knowledgeable and sensitive to the people that we work with.
Yeah.
We get a lot of pats on the back, but we also get a lot of criticism at times
Well,
too for the things we can't quite accomplish. So we
yeah.
just have to keep going. Like the work doesn't end.
Yeah.
It's a process of getting the world more
Well,
sensitive.
you guys have been in business for over 30 years. The Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. The phone number is 1-800-9 autism extension 1. The website is card.miami.edu. The Autism Assessment Clinic is 305-284-6140, where go on the website, check it out. They're full of information left and right. You just mentioned the word bully, and I was bullied in high school by someone, and I wasn't very much of a tough guy. I was not in the in crowd. I was not in the out crowd. But bullying to me is ignorance of what the facts are, and they don't want to know what they are. Somebody's influenced them to believe that this is this and that's that, and this is somebody different, and they're different than you. They're not better than you. And I've never gone along with bullying. By the way, I did get back at the bully. He served in Vietnam, and I got even with him in one way or another. He was in the Army. I was in the Air Force. But serving the community for 30 years has got to be an experience and a half. How do you deal with it? It's sort of like the people that took care of my mom before she passed away in the hospital. Uh, how do you deal with it on a day-to-day basis? Autism children are beautiful. They're wonderful. Some of them are the most creative people God ever put on earth. And I sometimes wonder, was Leonardo, did he have autism? Raphael? Did Michelangelo? Did Matisse? Did some of the greatest minds in the world? Is there a possibility that some of those people were autistic,
Elon
doctor?
Musk is.
Elon Musk, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elon Musk has it, and but he fluctuates. It's almost like a combination of autism and bipolar. He goes from one extreme to another, and it's kind of weird. But how do you deal with the bullies that you hear about?
Jen, you want to take that one?
Oh, I mean, we, yeah, I think all you can do is support people's experiences.
Mhm.
And obviously, like Michael said, we work with the schools, so we're out there doing staff training, training the administration of schools, coming up with supports and strategies and intervention. But on the personal side, for people that you work with, I think it's just helping them to know that that's not their fault. They're not
Yeah.
alone. Providing that support. I run some support groups for adults, and many of our adults talk about their experiences as a child with bullying and share it. And I think it's really helpful. I think we forget that how that can be very isolating. And so autism can be isolating if you don't know about CARD and you don't know who to reach out to. So I think just helping people feel that they're not alone and that someone is there and someone understands them.
Yeah.
And their
The other
experience.
thing we spend a lot of time doing, and I think it's maybe the most important thing, is we're trying to teach people with autism to self-advocate. Because you can train all the teachers in the world, all the neurotypical people in the world, but at the end of the day, the person with autism walks in their own shoes every day and encounters lots of people, some of who may or may not be enlightened about what it means to interact with someone with autism. So having this person, the autistic person, be able to advocate, to self-advocate, is really an important skill set, so that they can, really turn the tables on anyone who might try to take advantage of them or bully them in some situation.
Does the light bulb go on when you're teaching, Jennifer, out there with the outreach programs for some of the teachers and just even the parents of some of the patients? Does the light bulb go on and go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, okay, I recognize that. Boy, that's totally opposite of what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And especially like I work with teens and adults and their parents, and a lot of parents of teens and parents of adults have their own expectations. Like we all have, for instance, the time frame. We all have this time frame that our kid's going to go to school and they're going to graduate high school when they're 18, then they're going to go to college, and then when they're 22 they're going to graduate, they're going to have a job and that's just an arbitrary time frame set up by society for most people, and it doesn't have to, it's okay. So I think a lot of parents, like one of the supports I'm really frequently talking about is that you have to be flexible. It's okay to not be in that same time frame. If you fail to find a job when you're 24, does that just mean you're a failure? No, like it's okay. Like people will grow and mature, and we can be flexible and have different expectations for the lifespan.
We live in a society now where I'm 71. I've worked in broadcasting and show business. Rick has known me for 40 something years. I've been out of work often. The highs and lows of show business can be great, fabulous on stage. When I was opening for Tom Jones or I was opening for Engelbert, it was great, it was fantastic. And then you go for 3 months and you're sitting at home and you're going, am I ever going to work again? Is anybody going to call me? When I was doing television, Hill Street Blues and St. Elsewhere, and the show would end for, am I ever going to get called again? Is my agent going to call me? So it's not just autism or any other person that's afflicted with anything. It's life. I mean, there is no high school, college, job, 35 years, you're married, children, white picket fence, you retire, boom. How many people do you know? And Ramon, this goes to you. How many people do you know that did everything right, 35 years as a school teacher, 35 years as a lawyer, and they can't retire? I just spoke to my former boss at the Wynn Hotel the other day. She gets $3,000 a month in retirement from Social Security. Her husband gets 1,500, and they both still have to work part-time jobs to make ends meet. They live in San Antonio, Texas. Now, I mean, there is no fine line. There is no gem. There is no real thing. Nowhere does it say you have to retire at 65. And people are retiring at 65. We're living longer. That's another thing too, doctor. We are living longer. So people with autism are living longer than they did children of 50 or 60 years ago.
It's true.
How do they deal with that? How do the families deal with the financial end of it? That's a big thing. The cost of all of this has got to be tremendous. Is there a cost? Is there a cost when they go to card, or is everything free?
Everything here is free. We are not the treatment providers, but we are hopefully the support personnel that you can use to get access to the things that you need. But no, we don't charge anything. But the cost of having any disability in our society, or any illness for that matter,
Right.
in our society is extraordinarily high. The cost of
Yeah.
therapists, the cost of schools, the cost of doctors and medical and psychiatric care and the like. I mean, it's not everything's covered by insurance. The insurance landscape is better than it was 20 years ago, but it's still not consistent across people who are living with autism. And so there are tremendous inequities as well in who gets access to what kinds of care. There have been studies that have estimated the lifetime cost of having autism, and it's astounding what the lifetime cost is, particularly if you're a person with autism with a more severe or profound presentation, meaning, severe intellectual disability, behavior challenges that are quite compromising in terms of your ability to access, inclusive opportunities. But, some people think that the high, what we used to call higher functioning, now we call low support need individuals. Some people think that their journey is easier somehow because they have more skills, but life is really complicated, even with high IQ and good language abilities, if you can't navigate the social aspects of the world. I mean, Ramon just disclosed that he's struggling to find a job. Like, he's one of the more capable young adults that we know, with a verbal capacity that is unmatched by most people, and it's still a challenge for him, right? So we can't get lost into thinking that a certain segment of the population somehow is better or worse than another segment. Everyone struggles in their own unique way. And I think
to address the unemployment situation, on April 20th at 12 noon, the CARD program is going to have a resume writing seminar on Zoom, and the Elks is going to pay the fee for the instructor. So that's something I know Ramon knows about, but other folks were going to advertise it. They've been advertising it. So that could help. And then one of the events we have planned for next quarter is to have a job fair of companies that do hire folks with the spectrum.
Great.
So hopefully that'll help out a few people.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Jennifer, when an adult is diagnosed, and doctor, I'm sure you can answer this too, is the adjustment more difficult than if that person had known what was wrong with them from a child on up?
Obviously there's a broad, right? Like, so we see everyone. So we see every response. It can be a big adjustment for families, because maybe if you're talking about somebody who's diagnosed as an adult, their family, they've grown up and their families had their own way of interacting with them and not understanding that they even had a disability in some cases. And so I think that can be a really challenging adjustment for the people around them, their loved ones, to understand. For some adults, I would say a lot of people who are diagnosed later in life, they have sought out this diagnosis. They've said, I need support in some way. I need something. So they kind of have an idea that there's something going on, that their brain works differently, and they want to get a diagnosis. So for many people, it's like, aha, or it's like they feel vindicated. I knew it. So it's such a broad spectrum, but it is interesting to see some of the family relationships that can kind of shock that, that internal family system a little bit.
Yeah. Are boys more susceptible to autism than girls, or is it equal?
It's definitely more boys, about 80% male,
Wow. Wow.
20% female. And that doesn't account probably for some of the undiagnosed women that are
Yeah.
out there, but it's probably quite close to the 4-to-1 prevalence
Wow.
discrepancy.
Any particular, again, we're going back to what you'd said earlier, but I need to bring it up. Any reason for the discrepancy in the 4-to-1 ratio?
Again, it's we don't know for sure because we don't really know the underlying cause of autism or causes, but one would suspect with a male to female ratio like that the genetics are likely in many cases to be on the X chromosome. So
Mhm.
when the X chromosome is affected, males only have one and females have two, right? So there's a more greater likelihood that males would be affected. But again, it's an open question, I think, still until we have definitive mechanisms for why people have autism. I think it's all just hypothetical. There is
You
some
keep
evidence that it is clearly more male
Mhm.
prevalent. So there is some indication that that would be genetically mediated.
You talk about genetics, and you've mentioned it quite a bit, and I've been meaning to bring this up. We've got about 5 minutes to go in the program. I just want to let everybody know. You keep talking about genetics. Is there any way to test early for a young married couple or an older married couple to test to see if genetics, if this is a possibility in a child, or is that just a completely unknown and it's up to God?
Well, most of the known genetic markers for autism are not inherited. They are what we call de novo or spontaneous mutations that happen. There is one known genetic disorder that is inherited, and that's called Fragile X syndrome. And in those cases, the mothers are carriers and may have been for generations in the maternal line. But it's a very complicated genetic disorder where the genetic mutation actually expands over time. And then at a certain point, it expands so much in offspring that they have the disorder. But maybe all the generations of women before who were carriers never knew that they were carriers. But so Fragile X would be the one where you could do some prenatal testing.
Mhm.
But the others are the ones that I'm aware of, the hundreds that are out there, almost all of them are really just mutations that happen
Yeah.
spontaneously.
And you said, unfortunately, in the minority communities, they don't get the medical attention, they don't get the medical care, and a child with autism can be easily go through the cracks real
I mean,
fast, especially.
the diagnosis is later, and there are a whole host of reasons for that. I think just cultural barriers, racial barriers, different biases about how different disorders present in children, or sometimes what people think certain races are supposed to present with in terms of disorders, right? Autism,
Right.
it's still very underdiagnosed in minority communities relative to the white communities. I mean, we do very well in identifying Hispanic families here in Florida,
Mhm.
I think because we're
Mhm.
majority Hispanic, but we still struggle with identification and engagement with African American and other Black families. It's a real challenge for us, and we're always working on that. But no good strategies really have emerged other than trying to just continue to share information, share it in a racially sensitive way, partner with organizations that have credibility with the Black community, like churches and other institutions, and just try to get the word out as much
Yeah.
as we can.
In the few minutes that we have left before we close it out, Jennifer, is there anything you'd like to say about CARD? And I know you have an event coming up on the 27th of April, and let people know how important it is if you suspect the child has autism to get a hold of you folks.
Yeah, no, I think, well, I think you said it pretty well. And, just for everyone not to forget that there's no cost. We are a discretionary project of the Department of Education, so there's no cost to families. And we're really here to make sure that people understand autism, understand what path they should take, maybe what their journey is going to look like a little bit better, educate the community, and which includes teachers and employers, and really just we do almost everything
Mhm.
related to autism. And Michael can probably tell us about Trouble Nights in particular,
Yes.
right?
Wish
Yeah,
I could be
sure.
there for that, Michael. Wish I could be there.
Anytime. It's an annual event generally, and It is our one fundraising event of the year, and it really is an effort to, subsidize the dollars we get from the state so we can do a lot of the other things that the community needs. There are certain specific things that the state requires us to do, but we know that the community needs more than that, and we simply can't do all that we need to do just with the state dollars. And I'm a firm believer that it should be a public-private community partnership. I think we're trying to build community here, and we can't just rely on a single revenue stream to do that. So we've been very entrepreneurial, and fundraising is part of that game.
Ramon, is there anything you'd like to say before we go?
Just that it's been an honor to be on the show, and it's been great for you to have me. And
It's my honor to have you on this show.
thank you. And continue to spread the word about autism and all that, and show that it can be done. That even when I can't get things done, it can still be done. So we'll just continue.
Well, when I get down there, you and I will share a plate of Rick Del Vecchio's famous Swedish meatballs with some noodles. And Rick, thanks to the Elks for what you do for
we look
the
forward to
autism
working,
community. Yeah.
We look forward to working with the CARD program the rest of this year, and can't wait for this first talent of the spectrum on the third Saturday evening.
I would like to thank Dr. Michael Ansandre for his participation in this program. He's the executive director of CARD. Ms. Jennifer Feinstein, MSW CARD specialist. Ramon, thank you so much for joining us. Rick Del Vecchio, as always, my brother in crime and the executive producer of this program. Thank you all very much. God bless you for what you do. God bless you for who you are. It's not easy, even though this is what you do for a living. It's not easy. Like I was trying to say earlier, and I forgot the name, hospice, when they took care of my mom. I don't know how those people do it. I don't know how you guys do it. I know I have a heart as big as the world, and my Lord directs me to take care of others, because if we don't help each other, what are we doing here? What are we doing? And why are we here? So I just want to thank you all very, very much before I say goodbye, and just thank you all very, very much. And I want to thank all of you out there for watching. And this program will be on YouTube very, very soon. You'll find out about it. And until next time, please. Also, I just want to really thank real quick, because I always forget, the Japanese Garden of South Florida for their continued participation with us and support, along with the Elks Lodges of South Florida. Thank you all very, very much. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.